It began as a quiet morning in a place so remote that sound itself seemed to disappear into the trees. And then, without warning, the entire case changed direction. Before we go any further, hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss first-hand updates on this developing story and others like it. 7 months after Lily and Jack vanished without a trace, sealed court records, hidden from the public eye for months, were suddenly unsealed, and what they revealed sent shockwaves through the investigation. For half a year, the case had been framed as a heartbreaking mystery involving 2 young children who simply wandered away from home. That narrative shaped public sympathy, guided early search efforts, and influenced how authorities initially approached the parents. But the newly released documents told a very different story. They exposed mounting concerns among investigators that the timeline didn't add up, that witness statements shifted in troubling ways, and that events inside the home on the night of the disappearance raised serious red flags. According to these records, investigators had quietly been questioning the original version of events far earlier than the public realized. The documents show internal notes highlighting contradictions in when the parents said they last saw Lily and Jack, how long they believed the children were gone before noticing, and what was happening inside the house during that critical window. What initially appeared to be small inconsistencies became more alarming when laid out side by side. Times didn't align. Descriptions changed. Details that should have been unforgettable, what the children were wearing, whether doors were locked, whether lights were on, became strangely vague or inconsistent. The unsealing of these records marked a turning point, because for the first time, the public could see what investigators had been grappling with behind closed doors. This was no longer just a case of missing children. It was a case riddled with unanswered questions. The released documents also revealed deep concerns about witness statements and the broader timeline of events, particularly those centered on the home itself. Investigators noted that accounts provided by the parents evolved over time, sometimes subtly, sometimes significantly. In early statements, the disappearance was described as almost instantaneous, just a brief moment when attention drifted and the children were gone. Later accounts stretched that window, introducing longer gaps and unexplained delays. Neighbors and nearby residents were interviewed, and while the area was sparsely populated, some reported seeing lights on at unusual hours or hearing activity that didn't quite match the parents' descriptions of a calm, ordinary evening. None of these observations were definitive on their own, but together they painted a picture that troubled investigators. What made these concerns even more serious was the setting. Lily and Jack disappeared from an isolated rural property surrounded by dense wilderness, a landscape both vast and unforgiving. The home sat miles from the nearest town, bordered by thick forest, uneven terrain, and natural obstacles that would challenge even experienced hikers. From the beginning, authorities acknowledged that if 2 young children had wandered into that environment alone, the risks were severe. Yet that same isolation also made the case uniquely puzzling. In such terrain, search teams would normally expect to find something: footprints, disturbed vegetation, dropped clothing, or at least a clear direction of travel. The absence of any such evidence raised early doubts, even if those doubts weren't immediately shared with the public. The parents claimed Lily and Jack had wandered out unnoticed through a back sliding door, a detail that became central to the case. According to their account, the door was either unlocked or easily opened, allowing the children to slip outside without drawing attention. Investigators initially accepted this explanation, but as time passed, questions multiplied. How familiar were the children with the outdoors? Had they ever wandered off before? Were there alarms, creaking hinges, or barking dogs that should have alerted someone? The records show investigators repeatedly revisiting these questions, especially after learning that the parents' descriptions of the door and its condition were not always consistent. In response to the disappearance, authorities launched massive search efforts involving ground teams, scent tracking dogs, helicopters, and drones equipped with thermal imaging. The operation was extensive, costly, and emotionally draining for everyone involved. Volunteers combed the forest line by line. Dogs were deployed repeatedly, attempting to pick up even the faintest trace of the children's scent. Helicopters scanned from above, while drones hovered over ravines and dense tree cover. Yet despite the scale of the search, not a single physical trace of Lily or Jack was found. No footprints, no clothing, no signs of a struggle or accidental injury. That complete absence of evidence became one of the most unsettling aspects of the case. Inside the house, it was silence, not chaos, that ultimately triggered the realization that something was wrong. The parents later said it was the quiet that alerted them, the absence of the normal sounds children make. But investigators questioned why that realization came when it did and not earlier. Court records show that timelines surrounding when the alarm was raised were scrutinized closely. Minutes matter in missing child cases, and any delay, however small, can have enormous consequences. The documents suggest investigators were troubled by gaps in this timeline that could not be easily explained. Weeks later, after inconsistencies continued to surface, investigators took a dramatic step. They obtained judge-approved forensic search warrants for the property. This marked a clear escalation. The warrants weren't about finding lost children in the woods. They were about examining the home itself. Specifically, they targeted biological evidence that could indicate violence had occurred inside. Floors, walls, drains, and household items were examined using advanced forensic techniques designed to detect even cleaned or hidden traces. The timing of these searches, occurring weeks after the disappearance, underscored how significantly the case had shifted. Those forensic searches happened only after investigators concluded that the original narrative could no longer be taken at face value. As inconsistencies in parental accounts grew more pronounced, the focus narrowed inward. What had happened inside the house before Lily and Jack were reported missing? Why did certain details change over time? Why did the physical evidence, or lack of it, contradict the story of two children wandering into the wilderness? Ultimately, the findings from these searches transformed the case entirely. What began as a desperate effort to locate two missing children evolved into a potential criminal investigation. The unsealed court records made one thing painfully clear. Investigators no longer believed they were simply searching for lost children. They were now searching for the truth, wherever it might lead. And as this case continues to unfold, the questions raised by those documents linger heavily. 7 months later, Lily and Jack are still missing, and the focus has shifted from the forest outside to the walls of the home they left behind. The key takeaway is stark and unsettling. Sometimes, the most important evidence isn't found in the wilderness, but in the stories people tell, and the places they never expect to be searched.